Story 1, Nashville, Tennessee. It's all tourists and a bunch of manufactured Southern stuff. It's as fake as it gets. Traffic is terrible. Every bar is the same. Every restaurant is the same. Everything is a copy and paste with the facade of variety and options. It's gotten pretty expensive too, relatively speaking. All the people who gave it the true character and charm have been pushed out for another dueling piano bar that the new hot country artist wants to slap their name on, or some trendy restaurant called Gather 69, where it's $39 for crinkle fries with garlic seasoning on them. Story 2, former airline pilot here, and I have been to every corner of the country after working in several different systems in the United States, and I can say without a doubt that Indianapolis is the most boring place that any major carriers go to. Also mobile, but I won't criticize them in case they are listening. Story 3, Forks, Washington. There used to be nothing wrong with it because there used to be nothing about it at all. It was a stop sign you remember on your way to camping. It's a fork, a literal fork in pathways around your way out of Forks. Its name isn't a happy, coy little affectation. It's just what it actually is when you're trying to choose between going to the wilderness or back to, I don't know, Aberdeen or something. But then a wave of people decided they could possibly be interested in vampires there and want to know all about it when they heard you've actually been there. They must know about all the amazing, romantic, glitzy things of this gas station of a town. They get so excited and want to organize trips, and there's a tourism industry built on it. You will not encounter vampires there. You won't even meet gothic wannabe vampires there who will pretend to be vampires in vague hope of seduction. Because there's nothing there. The most exciting thing that I've ever experienced in Forks is when my friend accidentally went the wrong way down a one-way street. He corrected himself and turned around right away. And everything was fine, and there were no problems. Because there was nothing to interrupt in Forks. Story 4, Beatrice, Nebraska. I spent 3 of the worst days I've ever had there for a work trip. The only food available after 9 p.m. was from Walmart. Hot, flat, and just pointless. Story 5. Bashing Los Angeles is just too easy, and it's already been done in this thread. So I'm going with Anchorage, Alaska. It's everything I hate about building cities for cars rather than people. Trying to walk anywhere feels dangerous because you're inevitably walking along 8-lane high-speed roads, and the public bus network is lacking. I loved my time in Seattle and Portland, Oregon, so when I say Anchorage has a homeless problem, it is a real problem. But Anchorage has one redeeming factor in that it's only a 30-minute drive from true Alaska. My first time up there, I spent a few days in Anchorage planning to explore the city. My second time in Alaska, I spent all of 10 hours in Anchorage, and most of that was sleeping between the train station and the airport. I'll be back to Anchorage for sure, but only as a brief stop before heading out to real Alaska and its true beauty. Story 6. If you do not like bars, it has nothing to offer. And the city around the bar and tourist district is just a mess. I have had nothing but bad experiences there. I would go so far as to say it is worse than Gary, Indiana, the city known for being the worst city in the United States. Gary just looks like a city that has been bombed out. It has that Soviet exclusion zone vibe. Not great, but not actively repulsive. Nashville just is not appealing. Story 7. At the moment, Trenton, New Jersey, downtown by the state capitol, is receiving all kinds of grants, but nothing for the poor neighborhoods with burned-out row houses or enough funds for remediation of the widespread lead contamination in the soil across the city. They shut down a large public school last year because lead levels are so high. Last week, the federal government released a report criticizing the Trenton police for decades of citizen abuse and bribery, and our water system is chronically unpleasant and undrinkable. Their water inspectors were recently charged with fraud for not conducting the required citywide testing, instead using water from their home faucets and falsifying the reports. There's no animal control to speak of. The city government here doesn't care about the living conditions of their residents. Their only interest is in bringing in businesses to the revamped downtown and meeting ticket quotas. Story 8. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. All the downfalls of a major city, homelessness, dirtiness, crime, and traffic, with literally none of the upsides. There's no shopping, no good music scene, minus 2 small venues, and not really a lot of great food or other entertainment. Story 9. Birmingham, Alabama. I cannot believe we fought a war to keep this place. Your chances of being stabbed are high, and that is the bright spot of being in that dumpster fire. If you spend any amount of time there, then you are hoping you get stabbed and relieved from the pain of being there. It has the crime of East St. Louis, the charm of Beirut, the culture of Des Moines, the fun of Salt Lake City, and the beauty of Fargo. The only thing worse than flying into Birmingham is driving to Birmingham and having to experience Alabama. Story 10. Why is Miami not mentioned more? It's overpriced urban sprawl. The metropolitan area is all strip malls and traffic. Sure, there are beaches, but the area is full of vain people and overrated in my opinion. Story 11. Irvine, California. There's nothing natural. It's for complaining immigrants who all drive Teslas and buy up as many condominiums as they can, rent them out, and send their rental income to their homeland. Story 12. Port Arthur, Texas. I was and am a huge Janis Joplin fan, and when my sibling and I went on a giant trip out west and I found out that we would be passing through, I begged them to stop. We found a tiny little museum where they had some of Janis' things, obviously reproductions beyond a couple of things, and a cheap gift shop that really didn't have much beyond low-quality t-shirts and stuff that said she was from there. I opted not to buy anything beyond the admission price. Not worth it. We got lost and ended up driving around the city until we found our way. It was largely abandoned, impoverished, and just sad. Sibling wasn't too happy with me. Story 13. Nashville and Las Vegas. Both are fake, fake, fake. As stated in another post, the excitable girls in Nashville and the Asian tourists in Las Vegas. They will walk right in front of your path and stop to look around with a deer in the headlights look. Every time. Story 14. San Jose, California, is a boring, soulless corporate city. It's unfathomable that nearly 1 million people live there, and it's still so dull. I can admit that the weather is amazing, the airport is never busy, and there is one karaoke bar that's pretty fun, but everything else is so unsatisfactory that it negates those 3 other things completely. Somehow too crowded, yet sprawling and empty at the same time. Full of trash and garbage everywhere. You can't ride or walk on most of the trails and paths in the city because they're all sketchy, and there's never anything enjoyable or entertaining to do. The nightlife is a joke. The food scene is a joke. The rent and home prices are outrageous for what you get. Want to pay $1 million for a 900-square-foot house next to a freeway on-ramp? Pass. The traffic is just bad. The entire culture of the place feels like it was a rejected concept for a 2016 Gap advertisement. The people have basically just been cloned out of some tech worker non-player character spawn center, devoid of personalities, any sense of fun, and literally just existing to take up space in areas that would be infinitely better without them. Anytime someone says something good about the area, there's a 99% chance they're talking about somewhere that's kind of near San Jose, but not actually San Jose. Like, no, the 45-minute drive over the hill to Santa Cruz doesn't count as something fun to do here. That's actually an entirely different place, Steve. And no, it's not actually that cool you work at Meta and own a condo across the street from the Whole Foods brewery. And no, I don't want to meet up with you at Planet Granite after work on a Tuesday because you're really into bouldering. Story 15. I don't like Fort Worth that much. I've lived in the Dallas-Fort Worth area most of my life, and I love Dallas. The aesthetic and pretension of Fort Worth just irritates me irrationally. Story 16. Los Angeles. Dirty, smelly, overcrowded, homeless everywhere, and it just feels awful. I haven't been back in years, and I would kind of like to keep it that way. Story 17. It's definitely Memphis, Tennessee. It is a crime haven. The culture is the worst. There will never be anything nice there. The citizens won't allow it. They ruin anything nice. Story 18. Gary, Indiana. Holy hell, is that place depressing. If I were a billionaire, I would buy the city and rebuild it. Shame. There are some amazing lakefront properties just north of it. Story 19. Los Angeles. Hot, traffic, crowded, smells like pot everywhere, and they drive like nowhere else on this planet. I was taking an Uber from my hotel to Dodger Stadium. The driver misses the exit, pulls onto the shoulder, and reverses on the interstate back to the exit he missed. Story 20. I did not enjoy New Haven very much. I also didn't like Orlando, but I was an angsty teen forced to go to Disney in August heat, so that may have been a bad starting point. Story 21. Portland, Oregon. The whole city smells like urine and is littered with needles. Homeless people are all over the place. Many of them very much need mental help. Story 22. Portland, Oregon. Expensive, filthy, crime-ridden, dull, ugly, underwhelming, violent, overrated, unsafe, dreadful, grim, frightful, horrendous, bleak, lousy, and post-apocalyptic. But disc golf is amazing. Story 23. Houston. Flew in for a football game. The airport was too far from downtown, and we drove through bland urban sprawl. The actual downtown was nothing but corporate office buildings of major oil companies, and everything shut down at 8 p.m. We were searching for a great barbecue place or bar and found nothing. No nightlife at all. Story 24. Portland, Oregon. I understand that every major city has a homeless population, and I am fully for protecting them and allowing them to have their own safe place to sleep if they want it. The problem I saw in Portland, though, was the hipsters that were intentionally homeless. I watched a guy wearing khakis and a golf shirt climb out of an expensive REI tent that was set up blocking the sidewalk, hop in his newer model car, and drive off. Story 25. I really wasn't a fan of Dallas when I went. Granted, I didn't spend a lot of time there, mostly in Allen and McKinney, but there's no reason to go to Dallas unless you work there. Story 26. Lake Placid, New York. I was ticketed by a police officer who was just sitting and waiting for someone to make a mistake. This was 30 years ago, but I swore I'd never forget. And I haven't. Also, Taos, New Mexico had to be the smuggest city I've ever been to. Story 27. Glendo, Wyoming. Just being there as a dude with long hair and no cowboy hat almost got me jumped by 4 or 5 guys with short hair and cowboy hats. Story 28. I have a passing hatred of Cincinnati, Ohio. 1. I am Italian, and the abominations they call spaghetti should be put on trial. And 2. I used to have to pass through the city every year driving from Georgia to Michigan, and the traffic was always so terrible. Story 29. Bakersfield, California. I visited for work on a project for Chevron years ago, and I thought I was on a movie set for methamphetamine users, pimps, and prostitutes and gang members. The young women there were much older looking than I'm used to. I'm from southern Louisiana where it's humid and your skin stays moist and hydrated. Bakersfield was like having a blow dryer in your face all day. I'm not used to seeing 20-something-year-old women with heavy, deep wrinkles and crow's feet. What? Story 30. Vallejo, California. I've never watched my back so much in my life. Every day, I walked my dog, it seemed like people were waiting for me to drop my guard to mug me. Lots of drugs and bad people. Story 31. I'd say Baltimore, but it's not for any specific reason. I just had a more fun time in other cities. The times I went to Baltimore were either for a school field trip or one time to see a concert. It was all right, but I had more fun in Washington, D.C., Boston, New York City, Honolulu, and San Diego. Story 32. Let's see. Carthage, Missouri. I've driven through multiple times on the way to Jefferson. The streets are awful, lines don't make sense, and some don't even have a center. Story 33. Surprised no one said Philadelphia. I take a boring city over a dangerous city anytime. I have a sister and friends studying in Philadelphia, so I visited many times. Every time they told me while walking on the street that this store has been robbed yesterday, this store last week, etc. There are okay-looking places, but nothing beautiful in that city. The only redeeming quality is that the food scene is pretty good. I haven't been there much, but Newark, New Jersey, is probably the most ugly city I have ever been in. I drove around the city, and there is no bright spot. The airport looks like it's from the 1980s. Story 34. Fresno is the only correct answer to this question. Hot, worst air in the country, homeless everywhere, there is no nice part, there are no redeeming factors. When I arrived the first time, it was near bar closing, so I asked Siri to take me to downtown Fresno. Huge mistake. It was 110 degrees, 11 p.m., and casually walking across the street at the exit was a short Hispanic man wearing a ski mask. A ski mask in 110-degree heat. I don't even think he'd robbed anybody yet. He just wanted to be ready. Second worst is Barstow. Story 35. I was there for 4 days, and all I could think was, why don't people just fill up the car and drive as far away from that place as they can? Story 36. I've traveled all over this country, and I've been to pretty much every corner of every Midwestern and prairie state, so I say this with some conviction. My least favorite place in the United States is the Bootheel of Missouri. It's not even a city, though there are some like Sikeston, Kennett, or Caruthersville. It's just a godforsaken place with no redeeming value whatsoever. It's like Children of the Corn down there. I'll pick the Bootheel over western Nebraska because it's just a very unnerving place. If you're from there, I'm sorry. By the way, northeast Arkansas counts too, places like Paragould or Blytheville, and you can stretch it up to Cairo too if you want. That entire part of the Mississippi basically, but especially the Bootheel. Story 37. New York City. Overpriced, dangerous, people are rude, the traffic, the air, the crowds. I went intending to spend almost a week and ended up leaving after 4 days.